Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Therapist Theater. My name is Josh Treese, and I'm coming to you from Music City, USA, with the podcast that takes a look at relationships and mental health through the lens of movies, TV, and pop culture. You know, I checked my calendar just before recording, and to my surprise, it's June. This week is number 23 out of 52 this year, and I am, to quote The Bachelorette's Hannah B., befumbled. I'm a big believer in setting goals for myself. Every year, I set several big goals that I want to spend the year working on. For example, this show was one of my year goals for 2019. I also set a few goals for each month. Sometimes the monthly goals are bite-sized chunks of the yearly ones. So here's a question I'd love to hear back from you on. What goals are you working on for the year, and how are you doing on them? Let me know on Twitter at Therapist Theater. That's at TherapistThtr. This week's guest is Will Mooney. He's a therapist here in Nashville that, even though I hadn't met before our time together, I found out we have shocking amounts of things in common. So remember, kid, there's heroes and there's legends. Heroes get remembered, but legends never die. So don't be an L7 weenie and dim the lights, raise the curtain, and start the previews. Welcome to the theater. Will, welcome so much to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I feel like, I told my guest last week that, Lindsay, that she was the first person I was introducing a new circle into the Venn diagram of guests, which previously was just therapists, and we went to school together.
Okay.
So now, it's
moving out of that.
Yeah. Now it's, like therapists certainly still, but also like people I've never met before. That's just coming up through the cool connections that are being developed for the show. So like you were going to fit into that intersection of the Venn diagram, but having sat here and talked with you for an hour already before we hit record, now I don't know if I can put you in that circle anymore.
Yeah.
Certainly after telling you so much about myself.
Yeah, thanks.
But now I'm excited because
now I'm going to talk.
Now we've hit record and it's your turn.
All right.
So typically we start out with why therapy.
Yeah.
But know that like that question can be broadened into just, hey, let's find out a little bit more about you. So like what was it about therapy that attracted you to it as a career?
Yeah. It's funny. I knew you'd ask this question. And so I was thinking how I'd answer it. I was like, do I give him the long answer or the short answer? And I think the part that attracted me to it first was probably out of two things. One, I remember when I was in high school, I went to a small Christian school and they had a class called peer counseling, which I was like, it was an elective. And my coach taught it. His name was Bill Delvo, and he was my cross-country coach. So I loved him. So I was like, I'm going to take this class, and I was really interested in it, and I loved it.
Huh.
And I remember he pulled me aside and said, Will, you're like this feels like really comfortable for you. You're like really excelling in here. Just think about this. Now, I'm like a junior in high school. And so I was like, all right, cool. So I always kind of was intrigued. That kind of started this like, well, what about this not as a class? What about this as more? So when I went to UT Knoxville for college, I studied psychology and just kind of kept moving into that world. So that was kind of the early beginning. But even before that, it fit for me naturally because it came out of kind of my own sickness where as a kid, and I know we'll talk about the movie in a little bit, I really relate with Smalls or Scotty. And I was a kid who wasn't going to be the best player on the field, wasn't going to be the smartest kid in class, wasn't going to make you laugh. I was late puberty, but what I could do is make you happy, so I was really attuned to people around me. and what they were feeling and what they were needing. And some of that came out of my own family and being kind of the hero child. And then some of it happened in school where that was what I was affirmed for and voted friendliest in high school and kind of been really like, oh, Will's great with people. And so there was a sense in which my value got connected to being able to care for other people. And I was affirmed for that in other places. So it was a slow but almost growing kind of interest because of I was just naturally attuned to what people were feeling.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned like, late to puberty, realizing that maybe you're, if we're thinking about like a role-playing game and you having to design your statistics, like you're not maxed out on any bar kind of
Right.
thing.
That's a great picture.
Did you? Thank you.
I think about that as well.
Clearly, I was the nerd in high school. Appreciate it.
So RPG, here we go.
There you go. Was there any part of you that like noticed that association with, the more I'm attuned, the more that I can, I don't know about maybe help other people, or you mentioned making them happy.
Yeah.
Then the more attention that I get.
Right. Yes. Attention or affirmation or, that was it. And that was exhausting for me. And there's a lot more to my story. We can talk about that maybe at some point, but just to answer your question more specific. So it's sort of kind of moving in that direction through my life. And in college, I did different jobs. I worked at summer camps. I worked in youth ministry, and I just knew I loved working with people because that was part of where I was, and thought I would try youth ministry, and ended up doing it and loved it. Ended up working in youth ministry for 10 years, and it just was something I enjoyed. And throughout that process, I continued to bump into my inadequacy to really help people. And yes, so that continued to grow. And probably 2010, 7, I had 3 years out of college, I was really going, I think I want to do counseling. And so I remember going back to school, and it came out of just my enjoyment of it, working with students.
Had you been a client in counseling before at that point?
Yes. So that's also going on in the background. And I'd seen a couple of counselors, started seeing somebody right out of college, because I ran into a place in my work as a youth pastor where I was so overwhelmed. There's so much layers of stories to this, but I joined a youth staff that went from like 6 or 7 to like 3. And so I was at 23 years old, I was taking 100 kids to the beach and teaching 4 talks and leading worship. But then going back to my room, I would be having ulcers in my mouth, scared out of my mind, not knowing, anxious. What do I do with this? And so that led to some unhealthy patterns in my life. And so, I was dating my wife at the time. I was just overwhelmed. So I started seeing a counselor then, and was like, oh, this is a real powerful relationship that's been very healing. And so did that for a long time. And one of the ways that I managed it unhealthily was with pornography. And so that really was what initially pushed me into counseling, is using pornography and how much that had damaged my own heart and relationships. And so all those years of that in right out of college, started realizing I really feel that there's a real healing process that happens through therapy. And so I don't feel like I'm talking longer, more of my story, but it all keeps coming together. And then after working for 5 years in youth ministry, I was like, I think I want to do counseling, but I also love ministry. And so trying to bring those together was really hard for me. So I went to Covenant Seminary and studied there, and they have a dual degree program, which is great. I could finish the Master's of Divinity I'd started, and then do a counseling Master's as well.
Oh.
And started doing those together. And that's why I left my role at the church to kind of pursue that, and came out of that dual degree thinking, okay, am I going to be a pastor or am I going to be a counselor? And really, really wrestled with that. we had twin girls right out of grad school. And so I thought, okay, I can't figure all this out. I don't have to have a perfect answer. I'm just going to follow the Lord where he leads me next. And grew up in Nashville and wanted to be back here, and an opportunity opened up. And I was like, I still love high schoolers, still love ministry. I'm going to do this and see when God's going to bring in this counseling love back. And so about 2.5 years ago, started exploring that after ordination and finished all that. I was like, how could I bring this back into my life and enjoy this and maybe even move towards licensure? And an opportunity opened up for me at Sage Hill and started seeing clients really part-time. And as I was doing full-time youth ministry, and then did that for like 2 years and just loved it.
Wow.
And so realized, okay, I think I want to do this full-time. And so left my role as a pastor at Covenant Pres here in Nashville and started doing counseling full-time with Sage Hill. So,
wow.
yeah, that's a long answer to your why, more of the story.
Yeah, no, that's good.
The story that tells it.
When you were doing, so I mean, I think backing up to, you said when you were a youth pastor feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's my background. You know, I was a youth pastor for 10 years.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think expressed while I was in the job, and I think some grace that I try to offer for people that are in the job now, is nobody ever told me when I was getting into it how many jobs were included in the one job. So like, yeah, you're going to be a pastor, but you're also going to be a musician and a party planner and an event planner.
Isn't that real?
And I think, you know, in the churches that I worked in, a politician.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the degree that I got in it did not encompass all those other areas. And so for, you know, a 22-year-old person getting into that and learning it and having to navigate all of those different roles at the same time, you know, while also, you know, dating your wife and you know, just being a person on your own, that's a lot to juggle all at once.
Yeah.
And so I could very much understand being overwhelmed. I mean, I know there were many times when I felt that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, you know, since you had already kind of seen, you know, you had these pop-ups in your life of, oh, counseling, you know, was there any time when you were in ministry when you got to do it and it kind of scratched that itch a bit and you were like, oh.
Yeah, lots.
Yeah.
I think I led small groups every week and multiple groups. And when I was in those small groups or even doing one-on-one with different guys or students, and I was like, this is what my favorite part of what I get to do. And I think what I loved about it was just it feels so sacred because somebody's willing to talk about their heart, you know, and when they start risking telling that, it's like, whoa, there's a lot here. There's a lot of beauty here. There's a lot of sadness and hurt here. And to get to be a part of that process and walk with them and see what healing looks like for them. And it just felt really, it just gave me energy, you know, and really special. I also loved everybody was different, you know, I just enjoyed different experiences with different people, and their stories were all different. It's just always engaging.
Are you an introvert?
Yeah. I'm extrovert. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Surprise you?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, for me, the one-on-one nature or maybe one-on-two nature of counseling, you know, now it's like my sweet spot. Like when I was in ministry, and every church I was at, here's a Myers-Briggs test, take it. Yeah. You know, it was ENFJ. Okay. Every time. ENFJ, ENFJ, ENFJ. Soon as I got out of ministry and I took it again, swung hard INFJ. Like, and I remember even saying when I was in it that the extrovert was a switch that I flipped whenever I came on campus, because I never felt like it was, I don't know about allowed, but it was productive to be a youth pastor who wasn't an extrovert. And so when I got on campus, I flipped a switch. Hey guys, blah, 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 and then, went hard that way. And then every Sunday, my practice was finish up stuff on Sunday morning, leave the church. I don't know why I chose to do this, but I would go to Best Buy and Target, and I would walk the aisles while I called my family back home. So, I would call, my mom first, my dad, my 2 great aunts, my grandmother. And, so for an hour, maybe hour and a half, I'd walk the aisles of these stores while I was talking to them on the phone.
Why the stores?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying is I don't know why.
Something comforting about.
Maybe it started out as I want to see what's on sale. But then maybe it was just, well, these are aisles that I can pace because I cannot sit still when I'm on the phone. I just can't.
Yeah.
I would do that, and then I'd go back to my apartment, and I would cave up. So it was like I had spent all the energy in the morning.
Yeah.
Go into the apartment after I talked to my family, and I didn't leave again till Monday morning, and watching TV, cook, whatever it was.
Movies.
But just, for me it was, I knew that the extrovert thing was a switch. I knew that it cost me energy, and I knew I had to get it back because I had to go and do it all over again. So then when I got out of it, realizing, oh man, that wasn't really, at least my true self. This feels like a much more natural, meeting with clients is still costing energy, but it's at such a lower rate than being in a group of, I don't know, a large group every week, 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah. I mean, when I was in those large groups, my favorite part would be able to find 2 or 3 people and we would just sit and talk. That would be how I enjoyed the large group.
Yeah.
And then, sometimes I really like being silly and doing skits and all that crazy stuff. So that part was fun too. And
well, I'm definitely not. I mean, I'm not a shy introvert. I've always said I'm an introvert that loves people. So I just look at it as transactional. I'm going to get out there and I'm going to be with people. It's just going to cost me energy that I've then got to go cave up and get back to go out and spend again, versus I think, the traditional extrovert, it's the opposite where, I'm going to get energy from being around the people, and being alone is going to really drain me.
Yeah.
So I got to get back out there and do that.
Yeah.
Which is probably the stereotypical youth pastor.
You think so?
And I would hope that, whether it's that particular profession, any area of ministry, or really any profession, that we're moving in a direction where it's okay to just be you. I mean, I know that there's probably certain things that are beneficial to whatever role, but, if every person that you're going to help is different, it would seem like every helper, it would be okay if they're different, because they're going to be able to meet different needs.
Yeah, I think that's an important part of even choosing who's your therapist.
Yeah.
Because it's so much about the relationship more than it is their training or their knowledge or anything.
Yeah, that's something that I think we've talked about on here before, is just knowing when you're looking for somebody that, A, it's okay to vocalize, hey, I don't feel like this is working, and here's why. Because then it gives the therapist a chance, because maybe they got a blind spot. Maybe they don't know, oh, I didn't realize that when I ask these questions that it pushes you away.
Absolutely.
Gives them a chance, which really that's just practicing healthy intimacy.
Exactly.
Gives them a chance to make an adjustment if it's them. And if not, you're not entering into an arranged marriage with a therapist. So you don't have a, set in stone commitment. Any therapist worth their salt wants to get you the best help you can get. And if it's not them, then hopefully they'll have the humility, the humbleness to help you find somebody. And that's something that I encourage all of my clients is hey, and I probably do this every 2 or 3 sessions. Hey, are you feeling like this is productive? I don't ever want to say, is it good?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you walk out of a session going, yes, and fist pumping, like, that was great. And sometimes you walk out going, I was just in war. I lost a leg.
Yeah.
But hopefully no matter which way it is, it feels productive, like you got something out of it. So is this being productive? Do you feel like it's helping you?
Yep.
And if not, do you want to go in a different direction as far as, do you have a goal that maybe you don't feel like we're pursuing?
Right.
That we can pursue.
So good.
And to try to be more collaborative, just because depending upon the issue that they're coming in for, like for me, my primary specialty is working with addictions.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, I am going to know a little more about what recovery looks like, a little bit more about a path they should go. And so I may say, hey, this is the direction we need to take if sobriety is your goal.
Mm-hmm.
If sobriety is not your goal, let's reevaluate and look at where to go next. But that, to me, it's always, you and I are doing this together rather than you coming in and getting a lecture from me. That's just not.
That sounds
not
lonely.
how it works.
Yeah, I agree. I believe we're wounded in relationship and we're healed through relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the huge part of therapy is exactly what you're saying. And one of the questions I'll often ask is what's been most helpful and what's been least helpful. And in that least helpful question is always where I get the most like intimacy connection. It's usually something that they've been thinking about and not sure how to talk about, or even just that the muscle of flexing about having a confrontation with me about something that maybe a look I gave them. I mean, I had a client recently say, when you reframe what you just say, what you said, like what I'm saying, you often don't really get it right. You kind of are like, it feels like you're trying to push me to get something else. And I'm like, wow, thanks so much. Like, cause I want to be with you in this,? And so if a client doesn't feel like I'm for them, or even they have the space to really exercise something different in relationship with me than they probably do outside of the room, which is usually like most often common thing I see a lot of people dealing with, codependency, which is I don't know how to be me with other people. I'm only okay if you're okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I love seeing when clients are willing to risk talking about what's been least helpful about our time together, because they're beginning to work that muscle and grow in telling the truth about themselves and what they feel and need. Yeah.
Well, I was going to even ask, I mean, how tough is it to ask that question for you?
Yeah, good question. For somebody who's a recovering codependent. Yeah, absolutely. It's good. It's actually healthy for me because it helps me let go of what I often can lean into in an unhealthy place with clients, is like trying to get them to be okay or somewhere that I think they need to be, versus like where I don't know what's best for you.
Yeah.
We have to slow down and really listen to what you are, where you are, and what you might need. And so that question kind of realigns me a lot, and it's scary.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've had any responses that have totally rocked me yet, but that could happen.
Yeah. I've had similar stuff where at the end of an intake, or maybe even session 2, a client will have said like, so what's wrong with me? What do you think I need to do?
Oh man,
and I've said like, I don't know. And like, what do you mean you don't know? Your friend's like, I just met you. I've known you for all of a combined total of 72 minutes. I can't be presume to be able to tell you a detailed outline of what is wrong with and what you should do with your life. And even if I had met with you for 20 sessions, I still wouldn't do that, because you're a person and you're complex, and I don't want to try to boil you down to here's a 3-point way to kick this. Mm-hmm. I said, man, 3 points would be a great way to that'd be so easy, so simple. I would
need a book.
I would love it if it was that, but it's not how that works. And I've also had going the other way, if it's a minor, as the client, maybe a parent, after a couple of sessions, hey, I'd like a progress report. And it's just saying like, there's no progress. Like, I'm just getting to know them. I got to help them to know that they can trust me enough to where they can really start to risk being vulnerable and come into the room with their whole self, rather than leaving the part of them that they're scared to share outside the door when they come in.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting about what you're saying is just highlighting it's not just the client in the room who has to risk being vulnerable. but the therapist has to as well, in the sense of
That's
being open to, if it really is collaborative, if you're really willing to let the client be a part of the process, then you've got to be okay with, maybe I'm not getting it all right.
Yep.
Or I don't even like that language. Maybe
I'm missing
what I'm
you.
trying is not as helpful as I'd like it to be.
Yeah.
And I can go in a different direction.
Right. Yes. And I mean, and a lot of times I'm doing that with a couple, and they're working together. I want to help them do that with each other and start trying to model it. You know, it's like, hey, what did I miss? Like, how am I missing you? Like, you know, it's such an important part.
That's a good question too. How am I missing you?
Yeah. How much of that did I get?
One of the things that's been really helpful for me personally, how am I trying to write and talk at the same time? Could you imagine if I was trying to chew gum too? Yeesh.
Do you take notes in your sessions?
I used to a lot.
Yeah.
When I was in internship and we had to turn in tapes,
Yeah.
one of my supervisors that was watching a tape with me was like, "You're really glued to that clipboard."
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, "I just want to make sure I don't miss anything." And he goes, "Yeah, but they're pouring their heart out to you and you're not even making eye contact."
Ooh.
And I was like, "Ugh."
Skirt.
And so he was like, "You'd be surprised what you'll remember if you can be fully present." And so the next step for me was I had the clipboard like kind of up on a table near me, and I learned to write without breaking eye contact.
Wow.
Which decreased the amount of notes. And then the next step from that was I got rid of the clipboard.
Yeah.
So like now the only time I'll touch a clipboard during session is if I'm doing a genogram.
Okay.
Other than that though, I just hit the computer in the 10 minutes in between sessions and type out notes. And
Yeah.
But one of the things that's been the most helpful for me, I think personally, and this is like in a professional realm, as well as I heard John Gottman say that he does this in an interview that I listened to of him the other week, which I was amazed. I was like, wow, I do what John Gottman does. Is if somebody is like maybe giving me feedback on something that I need to grow in.
Yeah.
I learned that left to my own devices, I'm going to get defensive and try to say all the reasons why it was right for me to do that. So what I've started doing is I have a little pocket notebook and I pull that out and I pull a pen out. And when they start giving me the feedback, I just start writing it.
That's great.
Just as
Just
another way
behavior.
of like seeing if I can process it, look at it, and just shut my mouth long enough to let them, let them talk. And a lot of times what I'll find is when that conversation wraps up, I will try to not in a not being present way, but I'll try to not respond right away, because I know if I can think about this a little while longer, it's going to help me get to a place where it's not just I was right and you were wrong for telling me that I was wrong, but it helps me employ a little more empathy to realize, oh, okay, so I could imagine even if it was me in a session as a therapist saying, what am I missing? What's not helpful, wanting to write that down.
Yeah.
To not be like, well, I was using this technique that blah, 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 that kind of thing.
Right. For me, that's I feel like this is a therapist jargon, maybe saying this, like we remember whatever, like our brains remember the most emotional things in our life. The more emotion connected, like limbically, the more memory, like when you smell something, that's connects to a lot of emotion. You can remember things more when there's more emotion involved. So all that to say is when somebody's telling me what was least helpful or how I was missing them, like I'm like all in. It's like, oh, this is big. So that's almost the thing I can't not forget.
Well, and I could even imagine if there's any part of you that feels scared in that moment, you get that little hit of adrenaline, you get that little hit of cortisol. And just in a biological way, our bodies will attach memories to those moments for survival. So whether that's a concrete or an abstract survival, which I got to find better words for that. For me, concrete survival is always like if there's a bear running at me trying to eat me, that's a concrete, like, whoa, this is a physical danger. Abstract would be more your emotional or relational kind of type things, like, oh, I'm really scared that my girlfriend's going to break up with me. Still danger, not the same kind of danger, but our bodies can't tell the difference.
Yeah, that's right.
So like in either way, it's going to release the same stuff into the brain, and it's still going to remember, hey, survival wise. So that's probably something to do with that too, is just,
that's right.
If you get that little hit of that stuff in your brain,
that's it.
I'm going to hold on to that stuff.
That's better described than what I was trying to do. That makes sense. Thank you.
I got to find better words than concrete and abstract though, because I just feel like it's, I don't know.
Physical, emotional, different.
Yeah, there's a better way. I don't know. Nice. Hey, everybody. This is Josh, and I'm interrupting the episode to ask you guys for your help. Do you remember in the intro when I talked about how much I value setting goals? Well, I need your help in accomplishing 2 of them. The first goal I need your help with is getting this episode to reach everyone that can be helped by it. So here's how you can help. If you know someone that you think would love this episode and be helped by it, take a second right now and share it with them via text or via the share feature in the podcast app. The second goal I need your help accomplishing is to boost the visibility of the show so that more people can find it. Here's how you can help. Take a second right now to find the podcast's page in the app and give it a 5-star rating and a 5-star review. That helps the show by making it easier for people searching for mental health or self-help podcasts to find it. Thanks so much for helping me accomplish these 2 goals. Now, back to the show. So, let's talk movies.
Yay.
What movie did you bring to talk about today?
Oh, The Sandlot.
The Sandlot. Talk about Venn diagrams. Second baseball movie we've done. Second baseball movie involving James Earl Jones.
Hey,
that
that's
we've
right.
done. Darth Vader is a big fan of baseball, as is King Mufasa.
Yes.
And if I could remember his name from Coming to America, but he was the king in that as well.
Oh,
King Jaffe, the Eddie Murphy movie.
Yeah, I don't know.
Another good example of a movie that I received as a gift one Christmas and had only seen it on television, and so putting the unedited version into the VCR at the house, not a great moment.
I've never seen it.
You bought it for me, Mom.
Makes it okay.
Yeah. So The Sandlot. I don't remember when this came out. I mean, I definitely watched it a bunch as a kid.
Right. I didn't look at that.
What was it, or what is it about The Sandlot? Which, I mean, with this show, it's not just, hey, pick a movie that's fun. Pick a movie that you want to, but we talk about relationships and mental health through the lens of movies. And so considering that, like, what is it about The Sandlot that made you go, oh, this is the one I want to bring?
Yeah. Well, when we were talking, you sent me an email and you're like, hey, pick a movie. And one of your suggestions was like, pick a movie that you think about, it makes you love relationships. And that's probably why I picked it.
Okay.
I love the relationships in the movie. It reminds me of relationships in my own life. It's personal. And I was even thinking about when I saw it, I remember it's one of the, you don't always remember where you were when you saw a movie. Like some movies you're like, I guess I saw that maybe in the theater, maybe not. Or I remember where I sat, who I was with, and what the whole experience of this movie.
Wow.
That's how I can do that for like a handful of others. And so it's got a real, I was with my mom and my sister. I think it was in the summer. And here's what's so crazy. We don't ever do this, but we were like running late and we went and picked up Taco Bell, and I had a chili cheese burrito.
You took Taco Bell into a movie?
I did. It was awesome. And sat on the second row. I remember chewing on that cheesy, or it was a cheesy burrito. Chili cheese burrito. They don't make them anymore, sadly.
Is it the one with the Fritos inside?
No. So they don't make. Yeah, that's a newer development in the taco menu. But
innovations.
Anyway, yeah, it was a really special memory. And my mom, she I think a lot of movies I sat and watched movies with her was really special. She was very around. She was always at home, and to get her to sit still and be with me was such a special thing. And so she was there watching the movie with her. I remember seeing Jurassic Park with her, different things like that. So that's a part of it. Relationships, I love, and the relationships in the movie are like, I love that. And I love baseball. Like, baseball was my sport growing up as a kid. I played it all the time with my dad, and playing catch. Like, you don't see that much in movies. And It brings a lot of nostalgia and love for me.
I have a weird, like, I feel like this movie is an interesting combination of like two movies that we've done on the show before. We did Field of Dreams with David Ball, and we did Stand By Me with Rob Fitzpatrick.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like it's this because it has the baseball obviously,
Right.
but also the nostalgia factor within the movie is going to be in both of those, in Stand By Me and Field of Dreams. But you also have this, young men kind of growing up,
Yeah.
learning how to do relationships with each other. You see this like towards the end, the narrator talks about, and the guy that, this member of our squad ended up here and that member ended up there. And
I love that part.
the two of us ended up staying, together this whole time.
Yeah.
But I feel like with this one, starting the movie off like straight away, there was something that I felt like just got straight to my heart, and it was when Smalls walks into his stepdad's, I think he called it a trophy room.
Yeah.
And he's going to ask him, first off, you see it all over him. He's like nervous and unsure.
Yeah. Bill, Dad.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was what got me, was when he switched back and forth between calling him Bill and Dad. And he had said that his own father had died when he was little, and that his mom and Bill had gotten married, I think he said a year before they moved where they moved.
Mm-hmm.
But just that unsureness and really like that desire in him to have a dad, and I would even go a step further, to look to Bill as that.
He wanted it bad.
And I was never really sure, is Mom telling him to call Bill Dad, or is that him wanting to? But wherever that was coming from, he certainly did want it. Yeah. And that was the first, and like I said, hadn't seen this in forever, but like that was the first thing rewatching it going like, ugh.
Man. Yeah. So there's a scene in there, and I watched it again this week, with this lens of we were going to talk about it, and with the lens of relationship and therapy. And I didn't realize it, but there's a scene where I think it's that scene where he goes to Bill's trophy room, or maybe it was when he's asking him to play catch. I think it was that. He's like, "Hey, can we play catch sometime?" He's like, "Sure, buddy, whenever we get a chance."
Which he asks him 3 or 4 times.
At least.
Yeah.
And if one of those scenes, it may have been the one in the trophy room, his stepdad, or, Bill is like, "Yeah, sure, buddy, whenever I can finish this," or in a little bit. And the scene ends, and then the next scene is Benny coming up to him and inviting him to play ball.
Is that when he's on the porch?
Yep. Yeah. It's like they're like put together to kind of show the difference of like, here he wants something from his dad and he can't get it, and then here comes Benny, this relationship that's inviting him to his heart and to more. It's like, oh, I didn't catch that. That's probably, for me, who Benny is in the movie was somebody I'm like, man, I just idolized him. Yeah.
I just realized something. When you were talking about your why therapy, you were saying that, like, your attributes weren't maxed out on anything. You weren't the best, at anything. And then Smalls, even, he's saying when he comes in, it's 2 weeks before school lets out. So he's going to have all this time in the summer. Mom wants him to make friends. And he's like, I don't know how to make friends. Like, it shows him, oh gosh, what's it called? An erector set. He's like building, the magnets and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, I don't know how I'm going to make friends with anybody here. Did you feel like you identified with Smalls, in this?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like, I actually moved when I was his age from Memphis to Nashville, and I knew what that felt like. So 4th grade, I moved. So I guess I was probably 9. Is he 10 in the movie or 8? He's
Something
in that age. Yeah. And so I could feel that when I'm watching him, and just that desire for other peers, to like other guys to be like, hey, we want you, like, come be a part of something we're doing. Totally relate with that. And then the way he tries to relate, he's like reading them, like, what are you guys like? What am I supposed to do? He puts on that janky hat, and he's like, I don't know how to do this.
I said when we
Just love
like
it.
5 minutes into the movie, I said to Leigh-Ann, like, what's the deal with that hat? What is that?
So ridiculous.
Just the oversized bill.
Yeah, and then the scene where Benny gives, he leaves, they leave after playing, and he comes back as though the first time. He's like, hey, that hat, yeah? He's like, put it in the fireplace. Here's my old one. Oh, that's like...
He gives him an old glove.
Yeah.
And he gives him an old hat.
Yep.
And even tells him, hey, next time wear, T-shirt and jeans.
Yeah.
Yeah. It felt like Benny with Smalls was so much more than just inviting into the group, but almost like, and by the way, here's how you do.
Right.
Being a part.
Oh, yeah. He put all of his credibility on the line with the rest of the guys. Gave him all of his stuff. Said, I'm gonna bring you in here. Even I'm gonna put the ball in your glove in the hit.
Yeah. That part, while it is an incredible movie moment, I'm like, if this kid is in 5th or 6th grade and he's calling a shot and nailing it that perfectly,
yeah.
What is this Superman? When did he come to this planet?
When did this turn into a Disney movie? Yeah, that's right.
Oh man. So tell me more. Like, you've got this character in the movie Smalls that, clearly you can identify with.
Yeah.
What else about the movie really attracts you to it?
I'm trying to think and not just put one of the things that with my therapy lens attracted me to it, to talk about it, was just the whole moving from head to heart. And I feel like I was like, that's kind of been my journey, because I always thought change or healing or hope comes through knowledge, figuring things out, knowing more, studying more. Like right before I got married, I read so many marriage books. Like I got so bad that I was like, I think I'm lonely because I'm the only one reading all these. Like I've got too. And then when my struggle with porn was going on, I read every book I could find, and it was like, this will fix it. And it's like so much of Smalls is like he tries to wear the right clothes, tries to understand it.
When he wrote down on the notebook baseball stuff to remember.
Yes, that's it. That's so it. I get that. That's something I would do. It's like, here's what I have to do to fit in. Here's what I need to know. And it's like,
I just wanted to grab him and like hold him and hug him and be like,
dude,
hey, buddy.
Yeah, it's okay.
You're all right. You belong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. And that's where I just totally relate with that. And I've had people do what Benny did to Smalls to me. Just say like, hey, bud, I get you're trying hard. Those jeans are okay. I'm not going to shame them. Your hat, whatever. You could probably write down more and more facts and never get it right. And what we want is just you. And like, can you just show up and be with us? Like I remember I did an intensive when I was really trying to get some sobriety, and I just kept getting stuck. And I went, a friend of mine said, you need to go to Minneapolis and do an intensive with Mark Laser. And I did it, and I remember going there, and I got so scared because I thought I've got to figure this out to find freedom, And I remember I was the last to go, and we all shared our like trauma eggs. And I waited to the end because I was so scared of, what if I didn't do it right? What if I didn't draw it right? What if I didn't remember that event that made me mess like who I am today that I need to heal from? And I literally couldn't do it. I froze. And it was a group therapy thing, and the therapist was like, okay, well, and he's like, why are you so scared? I was like, I don't know if I did this right. I've got to know if I'm going to do it right, and I don't know how. Again, if it doesn't work, I don't know what's going to happen. And he literally took my trauma egg, picked it up, and he turned it over and said, you don't get to do it like this. You just got to go with what's in your heart. And I just about peed my pants. Like, I was just like, I just couldn't handle it. I didn't know what to do. Like, my structure was gone. He was like, I just want you. Like, just come on, tell us what.
You're enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me your heart. And so that for me has been my story of like, just moving out of the head to the heart. And I mean, that's uniquely a theme of the movie. Like I at the end, when Benny is trying to figure out what to do to get the ball back from the beast. They're like trying all these different solutions, all these creative ways of fixing the problem. And he's like, you just got to follow your heart. And Babe Ruth comes to him and he's like, hey, heroes get remembered and legends never die. Follow your heart, kid, and you'll never go wrong. He's like, okay, so just got to just face it and walk into there. And so I think that theme in the movie, moving from the healing from the head to the heart, has been my story. And so the more I think about this movie, the more I love it.
Yeah, I wonder if there is, I don't wonder. There's definitely, Smalls, as a kid who has lost his father, is desiring this paternal connection with his stepdad.
Right.
And at the same time desiring, so my mentor, Dr. Rolshine, I remember saying at one point, for a healthy life to be going on, you got to have somebody above you who's feeding into you. You got to have people beside you that you're walking with, and you need to have somebody below you that you're feeding into. So in the movie, Smalls is desiring that above you, connection with his stepdad. He's also desiring that peer connection as well. And, really feeling like, I don't know how to do it. Mm-hmm. Like, and it could be that his dad, passed away before he had the chance to impart on him, here's how you do it. Right. Which is never really an instructional so much as just a modeling, and a lot of that coming from just accepting him for who he is, helping, validate the strengths and the talents that he sees in his son. Yeah, affirming him. Yeah, and then even when it comes to, maybe deficits that the son has, either, cool, let's work on those, or, you know what, it's okay to have that limitation. That's just a bad case of being a person, and that's part of
welcome to being human.
Who it is. Yeah. Yeah. And to see him, I think, yearn for those connections and to attempt to make them in the best way that he knows how. That baseball stuff to memorize, that is such an image that I think will now be indelibly stuck in my head because of who I am, which I feel like in the short time that we've been talking, I feel this kinship with you because I think, Enneagram-wise, type 6, head type person, feeling so much safety and security in knowledge. Yeah. That is where I would have gone to, is if I could have this running database of facts in my head, then I'll be okay. I'll know how to speak the language, so I'll belong, which will help me feel safe and secure. Right. To see that that's how he's trying to get in. Yep. And then ultimately, it's when he allows himself to just drop that, be with the others, and that's when I got us into the biggest pickle we've ever been in. Right. And then it's just them trying to solve it together. Right. And it's through that shared experience. It's through that. I don't think he did it intentionally, but saying to them, that ball was signed by some woman, Ruth, baby Ruth or whatever. And then just, I don't know who Babe Ruth is. Once they get past that, right, allowing himself to be vulnerable and just fully entering into the relationships, that's really what ultimately helps him finally feel at home, a part of. Yep. That's it. I mean, and what I hear you saying in that I think is so key to therapy is like the way he moves to his heart and towards more a sense of ownership of who he is, and that freedom that you see him come into with is in himself, all happens through relationship. Yeah. And that's what I believe is like what I was saying about therapy is like, I think the best thing we can bring to our clients is a sense of presence with them and being with them. And that's what Benny does with Smalls. He's this like non-anxious, unconditional positive regard, differentiated presence with him that allows Smalls to begin to find his heart and not have to fix it and control, and then draws him into, now you have this with me,
Smalls is like he's like, you can do this. I'm with you. I'm in this with you. Now let's go try this with other relationships. What about these other guys? Now they're a little different. They're going to throw some chew at you and ask you to go ride a merry-go-round, you know?
Oh my God.
That scene is so ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's a part in that. I didn't notice this. And so I watched that differently this week, thinking about the relationship with Benny and Smalls. And Benny is standing behind Smalls when, what's his name? I forget his name. Like, Big Chew, you know, he shows it out. Bertram. Yep. And they're all like, yeah. And like, you know, Smalls is like, what is this? Benny comes up behind Smalls and puts his arms or his hands on his shoulders and kind of like does this.
Huh.
Like, it's okay. Like, I was like, whoa, that's some man love up here. Like, you know, like this is like, it felt really like not something I noticed in the whole movie, but
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, something about that just kind of shocked me. But I mean, that's a very physical expression of what I saw with Benny and Smalls through the whole movie.
Yeah, he was really a steadying presence, I think, during all of this, like, experimentation in relationship. This attempt. Another thing that I thought about that I feel like is a part of my story is the relationship that they were able to form with Mr. Myrtle. Myrtle? What is it?
I thought it's Myrtle. I don't
Myrtle?
know. Sounds right.
Myrtle. Yep. That was one of my aunt's names. Also, really touristy beach that I used to go to.
Oh yeah.
The whole premise behind the Beast.
Yeah.
At the back of the Sandlot, just a source of total fear. And what's interesting is I think like a lot of fears, the way that I kind of conceptualize fear is there's always an element of feeling like you're not in control. And a lot of, just with humans, feeling like you're not in control is going to stem from an element of the unknown. Now, as a kid, fear of the dark, that's going to be the first, you know, kind of place that you hit it. I'm
Right.
38 and still have that.
You
but
afraid of the dark?
in this, in this case, you know, you've got this shadow of the Beast that appears on the fence at the
Right.
back of the Sandlot, which makes the Beast look like he's 8 feet tall.
Yeah.
You know, really this like Cerberus 3-headed dog kind of terrifying, you know, figure back there. Towards the end of the movie, you know, when Smalls knocks the Babe Ruth ball over the fence and they're trying to get it, when that fence comes down and the Beast is chasing Benny. By the way, Benny, such great cardio for him to be able to run that much towards the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when they get a good look at the Beast, certainly still scary, but not, you know, what they were probably thinking. Once they get back into Mr. Myrtle's yard and knock on the door, and he comes to the door, you know, Squints had told this story
Right.
of the origin of the Beast, and, you know, Mr. Myrtle had fed this kid to him and that kind of thing. What they find is, you know, this older guy who is so unbelievably friendly and welcoming and excited to talk to them, which there was a part of me even watching it now where I was like, a little stranger danger. They're going into a stranger's house they've never met
right.
before. I don't
It's
know
the
if I'd want my kid
1970s.
to. Yeah. 62, I think, is when the movie took place.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I read that on IMDb.
That's right. That sounds right.
But what I thought about was overcoming their fear. They were rewarded with a relationship that gave so much to them with him. You know, not only did they get the Babe Ruth ball back, but they got a ball that was signed by all of the 1927 Yankees, which, of course, in the end blows Bill's socks off.
He only grounded for 2 weeks or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we'll be okay, bud. And I think back to, like, I vividly remember at the end of college, we would have these get-togethers of our particular major. So, like, for me, youth ministry. And and my mentor, Dr. Olshine, him and the other 2 youth ministry staff, we'd have all of the people in that major in this little room. And at the end of college, he would invite us, seniors to come up and just, hey, thoughts, reflections, what have you? And I remember that last year that I was there, something had changed in me to where I wasn't isolating as much. I was really trying to get to know some people that I think I had been too afraid to get to know up until that point. I don't know if I would have articulated it as I was too afraid. But I just remember kind of opening up my relational sphere and just being so glad I did, and being so incredibly glad that I had new people in it. It was so rewarding.
You risked it.
And I remember so much of it was just being afraid to do that. And I kind of see, and there's been other times in my life where I've seen that happen too. You take a step out, you risk being vulnerable, and ultimately, by being vulnerable and bringing your true self to the table, it's an invitation for others, and they come and meet at the table as well.
Right.
And that vulnerability breeds intimacy, and that intimacy is the reward of relationship. And I see that in that part where they were so scared of what was behind that fence. And then once the fence came down, and that even right there is like a metaphor. I mean, but once the fence came down, they were rewarded so much with this relationship. And I can't even begin to imagine how many times those kids went to his, den or whatever again and just listened to him tell stories of playing and, of knowing Babe Ruth George, and that giant grin that comes across, his face. What that must have been like for them as young baseball fans at that time to be able to have that relationship with that guy.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I know. I wish Sandlot 2 actually did that. I actually haven't seen it, but what I've seen enough from it.
I think there's a 2 and a 3.
Oh,
and it looks like on IMDb they're coming out with a TV series of it too. Like now they're working on one.
Cool. Hopefully they don't ruin it. Kind of like that it ends. But yeah, like that relationship. I think the thing when you were talking about that, thinking about fear with myself, with clients, I think that the whole unknown is so scary, and we all have our own past that we make up that informs our future in our own minds and our own fears. And it's like, well, the last kid that went over there, they fed him to the dog, it's like, oh yeah, like this is scary. And I think the thing that I run into with clients and in myself is people come into therapy thinking, hey, will you just make me comfortable with life and with fear? And they're not saying that directly, but it's like, hey, I've got this issue in my life that I want the pain to go away. And, because this relationship's painful, or this fear, my insecurity, I keep feeling this. And the reality is, like, fear's always there, and it's like part of life. And it's hard doing therapy with somebody, and just because there's almost an agreement that they're like, hey, will you make the reality that life is scary go away? And it's like, I can't do that for you. There's always a beast. There's always your past that's going to inform your future, and you don't know what's there. Even I could tell you about Mr. Myrtle. He's awesome. He's real, but it's always going to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, I remember, thinking when I first started therapy as a client that there would come a time when I quote unquote graduated, and that graduation would be, I would be able to be unaffected by things. Like I thought at the beginning that I would actually feel less at the end.
Yeah.
And what I discovered was that, and Todd Wormer said it this way, that you end up feeling better. Your ability to feel is better.
Right.
Not that you feel better like you're always happy.
No more,
but like
no more anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I actually found was, throughout the work that I did, was that I felt more. I I was more acutely aware, oh gosh, I am afraid a lot more than I thought I was. And I thought I was afraid a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I am angry more. And it wasn't necessarily that I was feeling these things more. It was that I had come online to feeling them.
Yeah.
They were always there.
Right.
But I had spent so much time denying them, running from them, numbing them.
Yeah.
And so to, you know, work out my feeling muscles enough to where, you know, I think I said before we started recording that previous therapy, I had felt divorced from my own heart. So to come back into relationship with myself.
Right.
And then through, you know, therapy, both in an individual and a group sense, to be able to, you know, engage my heart and then learn to engage the hearts of others.
Right.
Was such an incredible experience. And even when it comes to my relationship with Leigh-Ann, with my wife, I have always said, you know, if we'd have met one day before we did, it had never worked out. Like, I would have never been ready.
Yeah.
Just because of all those years of therapy, you know, allowed me to get to the place where if I can engage my own heart and engage in friendship level intimacy with other people, that's what prepared me for being able to engage in intimacy with her.
Absolutely.
And without that practice, and that's not to say I'd get it right all the time now, but
right. Yeah.
She said that she had some coworker at work be like, "Your husband is a marriage and family therapist." Like, wow. What must
your marriage
must be? And she said that they were like, he must get everything right. And I was like, so you told him I did, right? And she's like, oh, no. I was like, oh, no, he doesn't. He's just aware of all the things he gets wrong. And I was like, yes, it is the burden of knowledge. You know, the ignorance was such bliss at the beginning. Now I know that I'm getting it wrong, and I feel the shame of getting it wrong, and I've still got to engage. And
that's it. The shame can get worse because I should know all how to do this.
Oh, yeah. But to be able to have had the opportunity to work through learning how to engage before we got together, I was like, oh no, we would have never gotten together if we would have met.
Yeah.
Before then, you'd have probably hated me.
Yeah, I wouldn't know how to be with you. Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, and go ahead.
So let's say that. Well, is there anything else from the movie that really just stuck out to you?
Oh,
because it just sounds like, which I mean, even talking with you about it now, I think the best kinds of movies are the movies that we can see ourselves in.
Yeah,
and we can see our journey in. And I think, you know, I said last week, that's the beautiful thing about art is it's not just something that we pass by, but it's something that we can identify with, and in the identification, by being able to, it's like Richard Rohr talks about observing the other, almost like as a form of self-compassion. When you're going through something, picturing yourself zooming back, looking at yourself as someone else, what would you give to that person? Can you give it to yourself? Mm-hmm. I think with art, we have that opportunity too, because, I mean, for you to be able to see yourself in smalls, and me as well, you know, you can kind of then think back to, okay, what needs maybe did I not have met as a kid that I'm still carrying with me? How can I, you know, give something to those needs myself? It's one of the most beautiful things about art that we can do that with as a practice. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else in the movie that you can think of that as like a theme or just something that stuck out?
That I identify with?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's so many. The one that you said just then, just talking about the childhood experience and relating with smalls, I think, like for me, the thing I identify with so much of, and maybe it was for me when I moved to Nashville, 4th grade, and like so scared, and I didn't know how to deal with fear. I didn't know how to deal with loneliness. Didn't know how to deal with hurt. Like those weren't things that we just talked about as normal in our family. And so when I experienced those, I was like, what's wrong with me? What do I do with this? And I needed somebody to guide me through that and how to manage that, or how to be with myself in that, how to see life as life is.
Life on life's terms.
Yep. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think that's the story of Smalls, is he's like thrown into all this. He's almost an pre-adolescent boy, or, he's like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, somebody guide me, will you show, almost the metaphor of him asking his dad to play catch is him asking his dad, how do I be a man? And him not finding it, not knowing how to get it, and looking for other men to help him find it. And that's just that's been my story. I identify with that
and then I almost think, so many of us feel like we've got to jump straight from being a boy to being a man without allowing ourselves to be a boy in the middle, in the process. Because it very much is a process of, you don't have to be 10 years old and learn how to be a man and jump straight there.
Right.
Like, the era, the life stage of being a boy, and then the life stage of being an adolescent, and a young adult, and then an adult. Like, Erickson's 8 stages of development. Like,
right.
Freud said there was 5, and then you were completely done with him by the time you were, I think, 8. And then Erickson came in after him, along with Freud's daughter, was like, nah, there's 8, and they take place over the entire course of a person's life. You're always developing. I think one of the things that was so beneficial for Smalls in this movie was that he didn't just try to figure out, how do I become an adult man and jump straight there? He got to savor this summer of being a boy. And my hope, movies are always so weird because you get this little slice of a story. My hope is that after that summer, he was able to continue, because I think that we got 2 youth pastors sitting in the room. I think that if a kid can really enjoy and savor being a kid, it helps create a healthier adult.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because I know that in my story, I had to jump out of being a kid into being an adult a lot sooner than I think, would have been preferable. And when you skip those stages, you skip important developments. Yeah. And so for him to be looking at his dad, hey, teach me how to be a man, it's not just part of, being a mentor, being in that kind of role. It's not just about teaching them how to skip straight to being an adult, but it's about helping them figure it out along the way.
Right.
It's okay to try and fail. It's okay to give something your best shot, because that's part of the process, is the struggle.
Yep. I think it's just teaching. What Smalls seemed to need is like, how do I just be human?
Yeah.
Like, how do I be okay with what I don't know, and be okay with what it means to be me, who I am, and how I'm made. And so I think that's the journey that a boy goes through, is like, it starts out with like, okay, what does it mean to be human? Am I okay? And you start at that age, you start looking outside of you to comparing, to your peers. And that's kind of what he starts doing. And through that tries on all these different roles, hats, literally hats. Can I be Benny? Can I be, and he's trying to figure that out. That's his process. And I'm sure he, at the end, it's interesting. You do see him grown up, and he's up there, and he's like, my role is I'm a
and he's wearing
announcer.
that fishing hat.
Yeah.
His true self.
Oh, that's right.
Oh my gosh.
Good point.
Wow. I didn't even think about that when I was watching it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. He didn't throw it in the fireplace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He also didn't reject Benny's hat. Like, that was just a part of his development. And then it just brings it right back to, in the end, he's a commentator, but he's wearing that old hat because he probably came into an acceptance of his true self. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a great connection. I love it.
Yeah, I think a lot of what Benny offered Smalls and what Smalls probably wanted Bill to offer him was, I mean, I guess you could use the word approval, but it's so much more than that, because it is looking at somebody and saying, you're enough. You're good.
Yeah.
You know, and
show up.
And having somebody bestow upon them that acceptance grants them the freedom to set out in experimenting relationally, in giving it a shot, in being vulnerable, in showing up.
Yeah.
You know, it's that, like attachment theory, it's that safe harbor. It's that, okay, cool. So you have told me I'm enough, so I'm going to go out and try, because now I know I can always come back, and you're there saying you're enough. I got you.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yep. It's that safety that Benny gave him, and that we hope to give our clients. It's like,
that's a great, you know, when he comes up with the hands on the shoulders,
Oh,
with the
wow.
jaw, like that's another one of those, like, hey, I'm here.
Yep. It's okay.
You got it.
Yeah.
Probably you shouldn't have it, because that stuff's gross. But like,
And I love that Benny just joins in right after that. Benny's face is so like put out when they're doing it, and then he's like, all right, I'll take some too, which makes him so human. I love it.
And I thought back to all the times, you know, like I was in marching band in high school, and there were plenty of times where guys would pass around chew when we used to do like 3 weeks of marching band, like practice before school started. So the first week you just practiced in the morning. The second week were, you know, the equivalent of 2 a days, where you were there, you know, morning to night. And then the third week you just practiced at night. And so many times during that second week, you know, guys would pass around stuff, and you'd be out in the hot South Carolina, 99-degree, 90% humidity weather, and people were chewing that, and the ones that made the mistake of swallowing, you would just see them fall out, or just, you know, lose their lunch on the field. Plus, it was always fun to watch, you know, which one of the bass drum players or the tuba players are gonna end up toppling.
That sounds overwhelming.
Well, Will, let's say that somebody was listening to the show today, and they just feel like, man, I feel like I could really connect with him, and I would love to see him as a client. What's the best way they can get a hold of you?
Yeah. So my information's on the Sage Hill Counseling website. I work out of Brentwood, and you could just go to the website, sagehillcounseling.com, and find my information there. And my email is willmooney@sagehillcounseling.com. And that's probably the easiest way to connect.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today, and can't wait to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, my love.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the wrap-up. The wrap-up with Leigh-Ann, trademark, copyright.
And as this section fades in, it will be to me rapping. The wrap-up with Leigh-Ann.
See, you make that joke, but it's going to spark an idea in me, and then I'm going to bug you for a long time let me make an actual rap song.
If you write the lyrics to the rap, I will rap it.
Okay, audience, you have heard Leigh-Ann Treese verbally commit to this.
I will regret this.
I am going to do everything I can to make this happen.
All right, bring it on.
Oh my gosh. I'm so excited I could poop.
But then it won't be continuous with the opening of the show. You know what I mean? Are you okay with that?
What do you mean?
Like it's the same music at the beginning of the show, and then at the end of the show, like when you segue into the wrap up. So are you okay with it being something different?
If it's you rapping, I have never been more okay in my entire life.
All right.
Boom.
All right. I have to approve the lyrics before I rap them. I will say that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
What movie is this about?
This is about the Sandlot.
Oh my gosh. That was such a good movie. And a great episode. What?
I agree.
Yeah. I really liked it. It's so funny. This and Field of Dreams are just such I mean, you guys talked about it, like they're nostalgic movies and they're a part of so many people's childhoods, including my own. And so it's so weird, in a good way though, to hear about it, like to be looking at it with the framework of, you know, what does this say about relationships, or like what does this show about mental health, or, you know, whatever. And like when you guys started talking about relationships, it was like there was something that clicked, that I was like, oh my gosh, the friend group, like, and all the things that friend group did for Smalls, you know. It was just really cool. It was cool to hear. It was just a cool conversation to hear about a movie that, you know, I love a lot.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you have any thoughts on the movie?
No, I think I remember watching it, which I did. I thought about this again during you guys' conversation. Just the beast and how big he, like how much it's exaggerated. His size is just exaggerated so much throughout the movie until you finally see him, to the point where you're literally seeing like a puppet's, you know, you're seeing like his paws and stuff like that, but that's a fake. It's like a fake dog because they're exaggerating the size so much. Do you know what I'm talking about? And all the little like
I do know what
scenes.
you're talking about.
And I think watching the movie, I just thought again, like, oh, it's so funny. Like it's showing the beast how the kids imagine him. And then when you guys were talking, I thought about how it's a good depiction of fear in general and like the things that we fear, and how, you know, sometimes things we're afraid of, like a difficult conversation with a loved one or something like that, can be like this shadowy 8-foot, like, you know, mysterious giant dog figure. When then in reality, when they meet the dog, he's not as big, so like it's not as scary, but then also he ends up being really sweet, and they end up getting this, you know, getting all of their baseballs back, and getting like a friend in the form of the old man. Like, I don't know, I just like that as a metaphor for fear, I think, and like doing things that you're afraid to do, or taking risks in relationships. Like, it's just worth it, and sometimes things aren't as scary once you go for it.
Yeah. And can even be rewarding.
Yeah. You can get all your baseballs back.
Boom.
And be friends with an old man.
Mr.
And what
Myrtle.
more could you want?
I can't think of anything more.
And one of your friends is a dog, which is the best kind of friend.
That's true.
What else? I remember you guys talking about like Will was saying something about how we're wounded through relationships, but we're also healed through relationships. And you and I have talked about that before a lot, or at least some, because I feel like that's been a big part of my story, is like understanding how relationships can be healing. Because I think there was a long time, like especially in my college years and like early, well, I don't know, like my middle college years, I just think depending on people was like it was a bad thing. It was very much like, if you depend on people, you're a codependent, and like you shouldn't, you know, I don't know. It felt like a weakness to depend on people, and to have relationships be something that you, but yeah, I don't know, that you healed from. Like their importance in your life, you know, shouldn't be as high as it is. All of that to say, which I don't know if any of that made sense. I might be rambling a little bit, but I love that he pointed that out, and I think it's so true. Like, yeah, relationships can be one of the main and biggest, you know, ways that we get hurt. But if you give them a chance and it's a healthy relationship, there's also just so much healing that can take place. If you're vulnerable and, you know, honest about your wounds. I think we're a good example of that. I think there's a lot of ways that our relationship was really healing for me, because I had wounds and hurts that had happened from past relationships, and sometimes even before I would like tell you exactly what happened, you would say something or do something for me or care about me in a way that was really healing for some of those wounds. So, and you guys talked about it more, or I think you kind of took it to the relationship between a therapist and a client and how that's another, like that's an example of it.
But even if you want to use like a relationship between two people, Terry Murphy talked a lot about this in her episode, but emotionally focused therapy uses the attachment, if we're talking couples therapy, uses the attachment between a couple. So a lot of times a couple will come in distress with attachment wounds. What emotionally focused therapy does is it creates emotionally corrective experiences. And so, you know, it'll help a couple identify what attachment wound there may be. And then by helping the couple to understand their attachment style, helping the couple to express their feelings and their needs to their partner, it allows them to kind of, like, it doesn't erase the past. We don't have the ability to do that, but it does help create moments in the present that can heal the past. And it's using the relationship that's already there that's coming in.
Yeah. Well, and even like outside of couple relationships, like look at the movie. And you I mean, I don't want to hit too much on this because you guys talked about it already, but like for Smalls, you know, the connection that he needed, like what he needed was to belong, and that group of friends ended up giving him that. Like that was healing, you know. He didn't belong at home, he didn't belong with his stepdad. And, you know, as a result of that, he wasn't super confident in his own skin. And it, you know what I mean? It kind of ended up all sort of taking care of itself, but through the relationships that I feel like were healing for him.
Nice.
Yeah. So I think the only other thing that I kind of like picked up on, you guys both, it's kind of funny. You guys were kind of similar. And you talked about going from head to heart a lot, which I love. And I think that's a hard concept maybe it's not, but I guess from what I know, it seems like it's a hard concept if you haven't like done any internal work, you know, to like distinguish between where am I? Am I up in my head or am I in my heart? And I think that's such a significant moment when you can drop down from what's going on logically to what's going on down, you know, in my chest, in my belly. Like, what am I feeling? And that's also where the best connection happens. So I don't know. I just like that you guys touched on it. And I think that's a cool concept, taking things from your head to your heart. I know for me, I always talk about how there's things that I know in my head, but it doesn't feel like I know them in my heart. And so I have to really work to get those things into my heart. I have to tell myself, you know, a lot of different things and kind of practice different like self-care like tools to make sure that there's truths that go from up in my head to down in my heart. And when they do, it's really powerful.
Yeah.
My brain's kind of wiped.
Yeah, you had a busy day.
I know. I started a new role this week, everyone, and it's been a very fun and good and good week, but my brain is tired.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been the old Liz Lemon joke. Wow, what a week. It's Tuesday, Lemon.
Except for me, that was Monday.
Yeah.
And now it's Tuesday, so it's even worse.
Oh, man. Oh, man.
But this was fun. Thanks
Yeah.
for listening, guys. I feel close to all of you.
Well, love, thank you for sharing your thoughts on the episode, on the interview, on the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think with that, we can call it a day. we're going to go ahead and say we're going to raise the lights and lower the curtain. And at least for this week, the theater is closed.